Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My daughter flipped out on me for eating her shrimp. After that, I took our son trick-or-treating without my wife. And after that, am I the jerk for throwing my niece out of my house? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen doesn't get to control what someone else eats. If you touch my Oreos again, I swear, Reddit boy. So please smash that like button. And subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My daughter flipped out on me for eating her shrimp. I, male 51, live with my wife who's 49 and our 3 kids. Our daughter who's 24 and our 2 sons who are 21 and 14. I pay the mortgage, I pay the bills, I pay for groceries. My wife works and her money goes for our vacations and retirement. We're happy with this arrangement. She makes about $85,000 a year and I make more. My daughter has a job that she got after college. My middle kid works part-time while he's in school to pay for extras. All 3 of my kids will graduate their undergrad with no debt. I work weird hours and shifts. I'm writing this at 3:30 in the morning because I just got home. There was a note waiting for me on the fridge going off on me for eating a box of firecracker shrimp I found in the freezer and I made myself for supper yesterday. Apparently, it was something my daughter had bought for herself. There wasn't any note on it in the freezer or anything. This isn't the first time that this has happened either, but I think it will be the last time. I'm thinking of talking to my wife and asking her to tell my daughter that anything in the freezer or fridge that isn't labeled is fair game, or that she has to start paying for all of my groceries that she's consumed. Because she does not buy the basics. She eats all the groceries that my wife buys. I don't really have a problem with her living here rent-free and eating my food while she saves money. I have a problem with her calling me a jerk for eating food I found in my freezer in my house. I should probably add that in the past, I have found out that more than once, food she got actually just meant food that she added to the grocery list that I paid for and her mom shopped for. Am I the jerk? Edit. To answer a bunch of common questions. Just spoke to my wife and my daughter. The shrimp was purchased by our wife using our budget. It was frozen shrimp, not takeout. My daughter has now agreed that if there is food that she purchases with her own money, that she will label it and I will not eat it. And I will make sure that the boys know as well. As for rent, I still want her to save her money. Kids have it hard enough these days. You're the jerk. Because as the parent, you should just talk to your daughter instead of continuing this weird, passive-aggressive, indirect communication by having your wife do it. Your daughter is probably going to have roommates when she moves out. There's a good opportunity to teach her about living with other adults. Everyone sucks here. It was an honest mistake. However, your attitude about your mistake was really harsh. You could tell her to put a basket in the fridge or freezer for her stuff. Yeah, she should label it, but I know I wouldn't think of labeling food where I live. It's weird that you couldn't resolve this in text. It also seems like you're looking for a reason to charge her rent. If you're going to do it, you should have told her when she started working. Doing it as punishment is weird. Info. Why are you so unaware of what groceries are fair game? My significant other and I both work and we both plan the weekly meal plan and grocery list. If you leave all the planning, shopping, and meal prep to your wife, this is a you problem. It seems pretty straightforward. If you didn't ask someone to get you firecracker shrimp, it's probably not your firecracker shrimp, unless you're still yearning for the 50s. You're the jerk. As usual, what the heck are these comments? You know you didn't buy that shrimp yourself. You admit she bought it. So you want permission to eat food you didn't pay for? But the person you should have asked about it was the person it belonged to, not Reddit. And since she was sleeping, you had the whole rest of the fridge and pantry of your groceries to eat. If you're bitter that you pay for groceries and want your kids to contribute to the bills, then be an adult and say so. But that doesn't give you the right to eat prepared food somebody else bought, labeled or not. Would you eat something out of the communal work fridge just because it wasn't labeled, knowing you didn't bring it? Are you that guy? You're the jerk. You are one family. Who gives a hoot that you pay for the groceries and your wife the vacation and retirement? If you claim the groceries now, she has the right to claim the retirement money. What? That doesn't even make sense. You're the jerk. So you think because you're the man of the house, you can just eat whatever you want to in the fridge, even if it doesn't belong to you? That's BS. You need to get your daughter's permission before you eat anything that belongs to her. You honestly sound like a horrible father, so don't be surprised when she goes no contact with you. Your kids deserve so much better than an inconsiderate jerk like you. Honestly, if I was her, I'd post a video about this on TikTok to call you out and make sure your job finds out about it. People like you really need to be held accountable. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know. Reading comments on Reddit is the #1 way to lose faith in all of humanity. I took our son trick-or-treating without my wife. I'm 29, male, and my wife is 30, and we have a 4-year-old son. As Halloween approached this year, my son let me know that he wanted to dress up as characters from his favorite show at the moment. These aren't costumes that are readily available to buy, so I was going to have to do some crafting magic and make them myself. I'm a stay-at-home father, and my wife is something of a workaholic. She could cut down on her hours if she wished, but she's always been a very work-driven and focused person. She's not very maternal. Because of this, my son has never been very attached to her. They have time together at dinner, but even during times when my wife is off work, like during bath time and bedtime, it's always just me. This isn't me complaining. I signed on for the stay-at-home dad life, and I enjoy every minute of it. I just wish, for his sake, that she would be more involved. About a month before Halloween, my son asked if my best friend, who's 35, male, could dress up with us. He had already assigned himself and me as a specific character, and I had started working on the costumes, so I figured it wouldn't be a big deal to add one more. He adores my best friend. They have such a sweet bond, and have since my son was born. I asked best friend if he wanted to join us for trick-or-treating, and he immediately agreed. During dinner the night following this, I asked him what character he wanted his mom to be. My son said he only wanted to go trick-or-treating with daddy and best friend. Over the course of the next month, I would casually bring it up again to my son, and he continually gave the same answer. My wife was clearly hurt, but would always brush it off. Fast forward to Halloween night. I had spent weeks working on these little costumes for all of us. As we were getting ready, my wife and I got into a big argument over the fact that she didn't have a costume. I pointed out that if she had wanted me to make her one, she could have requested I do so, or she could have gotten one for herself. She said it was ridiculous that the 3 of us were doing a matching theme and leaving her out of it, and that she wasn't even going. In the end, best friend and I took him trick-or-treating alone, and my wife still isn't speaking to me because she can't believe I actually went without her. Am I the jerk? I have to go with you're the jerk. I'm halfway waiting for the update where you turn the guest room into an art studio for the best friend without discussing it with your wife. Info: why did you let your 4-year-old exclude mom and kind of just roll with it? Especially since you say that she was clearly hurt by it and also that you wish they had a stronger bond. Not making a judgment yet, just looking for more clarification on your thought process when he said he didn't want her coming. Not downplaying that she needs to make an effort because she obviously does. It would be great if wife was more involved with your son. It would have been nice if she had expressed a definite interest in participating so you would have had a costume ready for her. When you were planning it, perhaps it would have been a good parenting moment to remind your son that being left out of the fun can hurt people's feelings and there was no reason to exclude mom. You mentioned it would be nice if she was more involved with your son. Maybe she needs a little help feeling wanted since you and your son have already figured out your style of interaction and hers might be a little different, but she doesn't know what it is yet. Maybe doing things together with her, but being careful to make sure she doesn't feel like a third wheel would be a start if part of the problem is her not knowing how to connect with him. I just worry that there is a disconnect because she's gone for too many hours, and then the lack of connection makes her work more to cover and hide being hurt. And what might otherwise have been fixed remains broken forever. Of course, I could be totally misreading the situation. You're the jerk. You do not let a 4-year-old decide who is included in family activities. You're the adult in charge, and you should have made sure to include your wife, with a costume that matched. Your entire post comes across as judgmental and whiny. You seem to want to prove that you're the better parent. What's that about? If you're unhappy, talk to your wife. Don't use your son to punish her. Do better by your wife and your son. Imagine if OP was the mom and the dad was the workaholic who wasn't included in the trick-or-treating. Everyone would be saying that dad should be helping with childcare when he gets home from work and that if he wanted to go trick-or-treating, he should have asked beforehand. But as usual, because OP is a man, you all are tearing him to shreds and making excuses for the absent mom. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Communication is very important from all sides. We always have to communicate about things and not just try to blow it off. Am I the jerk for throwing my niece out of my house? I, 48 female, have a beautiful daughter, Amelia, who's 17. I'm a single mother because Amelia's father left before she was born, and she is my whole entire world. Amelia is also a teen mother to my beautiful grandson, Owen, who's 1. I'm obviously not proud of her for being a teen mother, but I am extremely proud of her for how she's handling everything. She's an amazing mother, and she's still doing very well in school. She's dating Owen's father, Raymond, who's also 17. He's a lovely kid too. They all live with me in my home, and I provide for them financially with some support from Raymond's family. I'm a lawyer, and I'm lucky enough to be able to work from home most of the time, so I care for my grandson during the day while Raymond and Amelia are at school. When I have to go into work, Raymond's family looks after Owen. Recently, my sister called and asked me if I could allow her daughter, Stephanie, who's 19, to move in with me. It's difficult to find a place to live in our city, so I agreed to let her move in for free. I'm very big on family taking care of each other, so I didn't want to charge my sister's daughter rent. I immediately noticed that Stephanie was being weird about Amelia being a teen mother. She'd make tasteless jokes, and I immediately took her aside and I told her that I would not tolerate any sort of teasing. I've hired a tutor for both Amelia and Raymond just for extra support, and when Stephanie found out, she rolled her eyes and said they wouldn't need one if they had just been responsible. She also said that I was rewarding bad behavior, but I told her that I like to take care of my family, just as how I allowed her to move in for free. Then I realized that Stephanie was taking some of Amelia's clothing without permission. When she first moved in, I told her that in my home, we ask for permission before taking other people's belongings, so I was pretty annoyed at it. Amelia asked Stephanie to return a shirt that she had taken, and she refused and said that Amelia didn't need it back because she didn't fit into it. Amelia did gain weight as a result of pregnancy, and it's made her very insecure. It was a shirt she wore pre-baby, and she keeps it so that she can use it to motivate herself to lose weight. I told Stephanie to return it immediately and apologize, but she refused. We got into a massive argument that resulted in me packing her bags and calling her mother to come and get her. Everyone in my family is bombarding me with phone calls, calling me a jerk for kicking her out. I fear I may have been too extreme, and I could have tried to sort it out before it got bad. Am I the jerk? So, your freeloading niece comes into your rent-free home, bullies your daughter, steals her things, and your family thinks that you're the bad guy for packing her bags? They're having a laugh. Tell them to feel free to take her in if they feel that strongly. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. She's 19 and needs to realize that actions have consequences. It was probably a huge inconvenience for you, and it sounds like she needed a reality check. Not the jerk. Stephanie decided to bite the hand that feeds her. If she can't follow the rules, she can't stay. Your other family members can offer their own support if they are that concerned. Not the jerk. But why the comment about not being proud of your daughter for being a teen mother? If my mom had said something like that about me when I had my first baby at 16, I would have been heartbroken. This stigma over teen mothers really needs to stop. Being a mother is a huge accomplishment that you should definitely be proud of her for doing, whether it was intentional or not. Plus, she has a great supportive father who is there for her and their son. It's cool that you're letting them live with you rent-free, but are you doing enough for the baby? The way you say you're not proud of her, I hope you're supporting them enough financially since they are unable to work full-time. Are you buying them enough formula? Are you buying enough clothes and toys for baby? As grandma, I really hope you can step up and stop thinking lowly of your daughter for the miracles she experienced of childbirth. Do better. They did me out of my pay. I did them out of their company. Many years ago, I got a job with a marketing company during phone deregulation. It was the Wild West, and a lot of small, long-distance companies sprang up, all trying to get a piece of the pie. Eventually, they all got bought up by the bigger fish, but at the time, they were all paying marketing firms very well to score contracts for them to lock people in. I got a job with one of those marketing firms, a new age capitalism company that insisted we all do yoga and breathing exercises while they rang a little bell and gave us affirmations about how many contracts we were all going to sell and how much money we'd all make. The job was 100% commission, but I was always good at sales, so I looked at the pay scale and noticed that it was exponential, presumably to entice people to work hard with impossible payouts. We were allowed to work as many or as few hours as we wanted to, with the payout based on your weekly sales numbers. I decided I would give it a shot for 1 week to see how much I could realistically make before deciding whether I was willing to put up with the tasteless vegan snacks and mandatory voluntary yoga regime. For the next week, I pushed myself as hard as I could. For 7 days straight, I worked 14-hour days every single day and used every trick and technique I had learned doing sales to score as many contracts as I possibly could. I figured this would tell me my maximum possible income and could decide on that basis whether to stay. At the end of the week, I had blown everyone else out of the water. In fact, I had not just gotten more contracts than anyone there had ever seen in a week. I had gotten more than any of them had seen in a month. Because of the exponential scale, I realized that I was making absolutely ridiculous amounts of money, over $10,000 a week. They had never expected anyone could actually hit those kinds of numbers. Coming in the next week, expecting a huge payday, I ended up with about 5% of what I expected. They told me there were problems with a lot of my contracts and that I would be allowed to fix them and submit them a few at a time over the next several weeks. These problems were things like an apostrophe wasn't quite clear or the dash in someone's phone number was slightly crooked. They were going to do me over. That night, I got a phone call from the company's office manager, Frank, who wanted to meet up for a drink. Curious, I agreed. Over beers, Frank told me that the owners of the company were in a panic because I would have bankrupted them. He said they spread out all my contracts on the floor of the office, then they crawled over them, inspecting each one and trying to figure out if I was committing some kind of fraud. When they comprehended that all of my contracts were legit, they decided that they had no choice but to do me over. Frank told me he had realized at that point that if they would do me over, they'd do him over too. And besides, he was tired of doing yoga. He asked me if I would be interested in going into business with him and go head-to-head with the bosses. I thought it sounded intriguing, but I asked him how he thought we could compete. Frank explained that he had found out they didn't actually have the contract for our city. They were acting as independent contractors for another company who had the contract to market the service in an entirely different city. They were poaching here because the person who did have the contract wasn't actively using it. We put together a pitch and approached the guy with the real contract, Joe, and told him about the people poaching his turf. We agreed that we'd split with him. We'd take the upfront money for each contract, and he'd get the back-end money down the road. It was a good deal for everyone, so Joe contacted the phone company and had them threaten the poachers with a big lawsuit if they didn't stop. A week later, Frank and I strolled into the office of our old employer. Most of the furniture and all of the yoga mats were gone, and there was just a table, a couple of filing cabinets, and a file box with the final pay envelopes for everyone. I made a show of counting my money to make sure that it was all there, and the two owners, the husband and wife, told Frank and I bitterly that they had had to take cash advances on their credit cards for this money, and asked me if I felt guilty for destroying their lives. I smiled and said, nope, and I left. Our marketing company made us a lot of money over the year until the company got bought up by Sprint and the gravy train ended. Am I the jerk for leaving the thrift store with an item that I paid for? I went into my local thrift store and immediately found a piece of furniture I wanted. In the past, I've been through the furniture section and seen receipts attached to items saying that they've been sold already and are no longer available. That was not the case with this table. Stoked, I asked an employee to help me move it to the register so I can pay for it. A nice dude helps me out by putting it on a dolly and rolling it up front for me. I pay for it, and he starts pushing the dolly out to my car. Lady comes out of the store behind us and is irate. She comes up with a temper, yelling that it's her table that we're wheeling out to my car. Confused, because there was no sold tag on this thing, I ask her if she has also paid for it. She says, no, but I told the manager I wanted it, and she set it aside for me. I feel awkward at first and just kind of freeze there for a minute while she goes back in to get the manager. I was considering going in and refunding it and giving it back. I did think about it. I actively decided that since I paid for it, I had essentially called dibs, and that the store manager should have had the woman pay for the item and put a receipt on the item as they've done in the past. So I look at the dude helping me lug this thing out to my car. He looks stunned and clearly is going to wait to see what happens. I decide not to wait. I tell him I'm not going to make him be any more involved, and I just pick up my furniture and start walking to the car. As soon as I'm finished loading it into the car, the manager comes out with a woman. The manager asks me expectantly if I'm going to give the furniture back to the lady. I ask the manager if the lady paid for it. She says, no, but we did put a hold on it for her. I tell her there was no signage indicating it was sold. It wasn't moved off of the floor, and no one stopped me when I asked for help moving it and checked out. The manager then tells me that if I don't go back in and return the table, that I'm banned from this thrift store and to never come back. So I told her I'm sorry that her staff had made a mistake, but that I had no intention of returning the item I paid for, got in my car, and noped out. I clearly upset this lady by not refunding and giving back this table. I feel bad that she was upset, but I did it anyway. I know I didn't commit a crime by taking a table I paid for, but am I the jerk? Should I have just given it to her? Not the jerk. This is how thrifting works. They're lucky that they have a policy of setting stuff aside or leaving a note on it. When I go to any type of quick sale process, I always tell a staffer and pay up front. Loitering and waiting with holds leads to situations like this. Also, the manager knew she made a mistake, and instead of owning up to it and maybe giving the lady a 10% discount for this oversight, she threatened you with a ban? What a crappy way to do business. Here's what the manager should have said. I'm really sorry, this is my mistake, but we promised this item to another customer. It's yours now that you've bought it, but if you're willing to give this back, we'll offer you a full refund plus some store credit to get a different item instead. And even then, OP still has the option to decline, at which point the manager should apologize to the other customer and offer them store credit instead. That's the only no jerks here result here. The manager really put you in a bad spot, basically making you look like a giant jerk for their mistake. If they were going to hold the item, they should have indicated it somewhere or moved it to the side. I'm going to say not the jerk for you and the lady. She trusted the manager to adequately hold the item. The manager is a major jerk. You're the jerk. This is why I don't shop at thrift stores. Too much riffraff. Plus, I have a good job, so I can actually afford to shop at real stores. I honestly think you should have just given her the table. She probably needs it more than you do, especially if she's shopping in a thrift store. I could never get over that nasty smell in there. It's so hard to describe, but it hits as soon as you walk in, and it's always the same smell, no matter which location you go to. Well, what would you have done in this situation? Would you have returned the table so the lady can buy it or not? Please let us know. If she had been very nice about it, I would have, but if she came at me with a nasty attitude like that, forget about it. Am I the jerk for listing everyone who has learned sign language from my sister to my parents? I'm getting a lot of trouble for this one, so I could use some outside opinions on if I should apologize or not. I, 16, male, am the middle kid, with my older sister being 23 and my younger sister being 13 now. 5 years ago, there was an accident, and my older sister, we'll call her Natalie, got banged up pretty badly. Most of it she got better from, but she's mute now from damage to her vocal cords. Natalie gets by very well with sign language. However, our parents have always refused to actually learn ASL. They always insisted that Natalie could write anything out, that text-to-speech was good enough if she didn't want to carry around a pen and paper. Most of her teachers were like that too, but I get it for them. She's just one student and they're busy. These are our parents. Natalie and I FaceTime a lot because I did learn sign language for her, and it's how she prefers to communicate. She texts my parents okay, but my parents want to use text to replace the long phone calls they had with their parents when they went away to college, and Natalie doesn't want to just sit around and text with our parents for hours at a time. They expect her to be sitting on the couch with the phone and replying as fast as possible in real time, and she's not interested. I overheard my parents complaining about this and insulting Natalie for it, and I blew up at them. I pointed out everyone who had learned sign language for Natalie. Me, multiple cousins, our grandparents, multiple aunts and uncles, the 2 boyfriends she's had after the accident, one of whom cheated on her, so he wasn't exactly Prince Charming, but he still learned, her current girlfriend, and her creative writing teacher in high school. So many people learned to sign for her, but never them. My parents got really angry at me and told me I couldn't understand, then grounded me. Then both of their sisters, who never agree on anything, called to tear into me. They told me that my parents both worked full-time, had 3 kids to raise, both had church responsibilities, and that Natalie and I were brats for expecting them to learn a new language on top of that. They sarcastically asked me what clubs and sports me and our little sister should have lost so my parents could spend time learning a new language when Natalie's hands worked fine. My aunts never agree on anything. We can't have activities with both sides of the family because they're so bad, but they both agree that Natalie and I are awful. So I guess I just wanted to come here and see if y'all agree that we're unreasonable and that I should apologize to my parents. Not the jerk. Parents should have been the first ones to learn ASL. If church responsibilities are more important than parental responsibilities, then they should get a reality check on what said church is teaching them. Also, it's not Natalie who wants those long phone calls, so they have to find a solution for them, not Natalie. Am I the jerk for refusing to give my parents my address? I, 24 female, am one of 2 kids. My older sister, who's 28, was the golden child, and honestly, I feel bad for her. My sister was a prodigy. She skipped 3 grades, was gifted in both academia and athleticism, and my parents made her life horrible. Her schedule was full. School, extracurriculars, sports, music lessons, dance lessons, etc. When I was very young, I was jealous of her. Then I turned 10 and started feeling really bad for her. She wasn't allowed to have any friends. They would hold her back. Free time, she could have the rest of her life to enjoy after finishing medical school, or even the freedom to choose her future career or her own hobbies. It was all planned for her to maximize her chances to get into Harvard for pre-med and then Johns Hopkins for med school. When she graduated high school, at 15, almost 16, my parents uprooted us because they couldn't allow her to go to college on her own. So we left Virginia to go to Massachusetts. I resented them so bad then, but I felt even more sympathy towards my sister because for years she's been dreaming about finally having some freedom while in college. They continued with their intense control over her life. I graduated high school back in 2016, then in 2018 I left the whole country. That was how much I couldn't stand them. I moved to France, went to school here, and I'm currently working here. When my sister got into med school, they still maintained their controlling attitude. Then sadly, in late 2019, she suffered a drug-induced psychotic break. To this day, she is still institutionalized because it developed into full-on schizophrenia. When all their hopes they had hung on her ended in nothing, it was because of them that she had started doing this. They tried to do the same thing to me. Sadly for them, I was already a self-sufficient adult on the other side of an ocean, and they had no control over me. They're my sister's legal guardians, so I couldn't cut them off. They're exactly the type of people who would limit my contact with her. And lately, they've been pestering me to give them my address. Apparently, they want to visit me and get to know my boyfriend. I refused, and I keep refusing. But I also feel a bit guilty. Them knowing my address does not mean that they would be dropping in every weekend. They live in a completely different country, and my refusal is making my mom very sad. Also, I have a lot of friends telling me that it is unreasonable. So, am I the jerk? Your parents sound like dangerous and manipulative people. I would stay low contact. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Go no contact. Hire a lawyer to sue for the right of visitation and communication. Save any messages indicating that they're using visitation for blackmail or retribution. You never have to set foot in the country. Let the lawyer deal with it, as many states have some degree of visitation rights for adults under guardianship. Sorry you have parents like this, but you can't ever give them any control over you. If your sister was of sound mind, I'm sure her former self would tell you to let her go rather than get under their thumb. You can use lawyers to put their actions as a guardian under a microscope. Try to contest their guardianship. It isn't cheap, but you can dedicate yourself to breaking their control, make them miserable, or get them to capitulate. Sounds better than hiding or letting them win. Don't want to give me my last paycheck? Make that a double. This happened to me in spring of 2017. In 2016, I was unhappy at my current position with not very many hours and too much drama. I started shopping around for a new job. Got a few offers, nothing that I'd take, as the one I had allowed me to have weekends off so that I could work my second job. I eventually landed an interview with a brand new construction company. So I sat down, and who walks out? An acquaintance I work with on the weekends. We start chatting about this and that. It's a ski resort, so it was mostly about skiing, which tends to be very enthusiastic. So needless to say, I'm offered the job on the spot, as I have a real work reference right there. I took the job as it was exactly what I was looking for, with a work vehicle as a perk, an expense account. Turns out, that was me just spending my own money and getting reimbursed. One of many shady practices and red flags. Edit. This was supposed to be a company credit card, not a reimbursement account. Being American, I needed some healthcare. I ended up having to borrow money for a medical procedure. At the time, not realizing he offered this money on purpose so I couldn't leave. Or I could leave and actually owe him money, which I would have owed him a lot, so I'm stuck. About a year goes by, and I see one tradesman after another get hired on, then fired. It was a repeating pattern, so I knew my time was limited if I paid him back. I also knew I'd have a tough time getting paid even if the amount earned was more than what I owed. So I began looking for another job. Found one easily enough. More perks, a way better reputable company. I knew I had time, so I planned my exit with only 3 days worked on the pay period. So when I received my direct deposit, I had only worked and was owed for 3 days. I could easily live with losing that money. So I go to the secretary and pay off my draw, get a receipt, and my balance is 0. Double check with the boss that we are square. Yes, he texts back, "Thank you for paying me back early. Thanks for the evidence." Boom, it all goes down in a crap show. I returned everything. Owner threatens to call the cops, says I owe him way more than I did, claims I broke everything in my vehicle. One of the beautiful things about a boss that is never on site is most everything is done by email or text. I send him screenshots of everything, including a picture of my 0 balance owed. Text back, I'll get my last check in the mail. Thanks for more evidence. 2 months go by. I called twice after a few weeks, got hung up on. Placed on hold, then hung up on. Oh, you want to hang up on me, huh? Let's see how the Department of Labor feels about it. File a wage claim with the Department of Labor. Lady straight up tells me there's not much she can do because all the boss has to do is dispute it, and then it will go to a hearing and be dragged out for possibly years over a few $100s. Email her everything. She compliments me on my thorough documentation and says I might have a case. She then tries to contact my former employer, gets hung up on, gets placed on hold. Then she got yelled at by the boss's girlfriend, who happened to be there filling in for the boss when he was in Mexico. "There is no way we owe that guy money. He was a real piece of work, and he owes us money, and I want to speak to your supervisor." No hearing was needed. "OP, here is your check. Please come by the Department of Labor to pick it up." I go to pick up my check. She then hands me a form and says that if I'm satisfied, check that box, but I'd like a more thorough investigation if one is warranted, and she strongly suggested that I check that box, so I did. 1 week later, I received another identical paycheck, which I had to go pick up. In the meantime, my friend who worked in the office started documenting everything from her side and had a similar experience when she quit. What a shocker. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.